Well, it's a custody battle that didn't go too well. A 25-year-old who's still in the missing person database is trying his best to clear his name and his father's name. Jocelyn Person spoke with the 25-year-old, and she joins us in the studio with more. Jocelyn?
Brian, 25-year-old Aris Howard is seeking help to be able to travel back to the U.S. Now he and his father can't do so, all because of a custody battle that went too far. This picture of a missing person is Aris Howard. He also goes by Alex. He's been in the missing person database for over 15 years. But the now 25-year-old isn't really missing. He's been unable to leave the Caribbean island, St. Kitts, all because of a battle between his parents that went wrong.
Had to order 2 police officers to physically remove my mother and put me on a plane back to my dad. And that's where the whole kidnapping thing began.
Howard says his father missed a court hearing and the judge issued a warrant for his arrest. Things got complicated and Aris was listed in the missing person database.
Hey, this is Matt Cox, and I'm going to be doing an interview with Chad Howard.
Chad Howard.
Chad Zachary Howard.
Chad Howard.
Chad Howard.
This is Chad Howard.
My name's Chad Howard. Fugitive actively wanted by the FBI and has a Interpol red notice out on him.
For kidnapping his own son.
My life is on the line here, and they've destroyed my career. They destroyed my health. They destroyed my finances. I mean, everybody in the island knows I'm wanted. I've been front page news down here numerous times.
Chad Howard, aka TikTok Fugitive.
Chad Howard, also known as the TikTok Fugitive, has widespread attention on TikTok after alleging that the FBI and Interpol have wrongfully accused and pursued him for years.
I spent time in 5 different Bulgarian prisons during my first extradition, and to this day they're still chasing me.
This is the story behind all this.
As you hear this story, you're going to be as shocked probably as I was when I first heard it.
Well done.
I'm Chad Howard. I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania, in the United States. I have some college. I finished 3 years of college before I left high school, but I don't have a degree. And I became self-employed and eventually worked my way up to Microsoft. Well, at Microsoft, I did a variety of things. I've done contracts for Microsoft. I've done software development. I've done architecture. I've done consulting. I've done training. I was a Microsoft Regional Director. I was also a Microsoft Regional Developer Advisor at a territory of 85 countries for Microsoft Middle East and Africa. But I also did work for Microsoft Asia, Microsoft Europe, and occasionally Microsoft US as well. So I really had a variety of roles there. And I did a lot of public speaking as well.
Well, welcome everybody. My name is Chad, also known as Kudzu. Why can't I restart an install? Why do I have to turn off an install?
Oh, it was absolutely my dream job. Microsoft was a fantastic company, and had the FBI not destroyed my career, I'd probably still be there. It was a senior position. I mean, I loved my job.
I don't know why somebody can't fix this. This one, I'm not quite sure what it's going to do.
When I met my ex-wife. I think we met in 1993. I'm quite sure it was 1993 we met. So, you know, we were both young and stupid. And then she wanted a kid very quickly. And held off a little bit. Our son was born in 1996. And then quickly after our son was born, I started to notice some real mental issues with her. It only became more and more worse as our son grew older. And I think we only put it together so long because I was traveling a lot. So I would be home for a week and gone for a week, and home for a week and gone for a week. And had I been home more often, it probably would have exacerbated sooner. But she became extremely possessive to the point that she'd not even let me take our own son like out of the house to go to the grocery store or something. She would just freak out if she was without him at all. She wanted him with her at all times. Early 2001, I finally said that's it, and we separated. We agreed to separate. She was fine with it too. And I knew that no court was going to give me a 5-year-old, especially with my travel schedule. So at that time, I felt it was best just to leave him with her. So I gave her the house. We divided the vehicles. I kept the truck. She kept the broom. No, seriously, she kept a car. And I just got a job offer in Europe, and I thought we could work things out with the visitation schedule. And right away, it just didn't work. She would interfere with even the telephone calls. I would call, and she would never let me speak to him. So we ended up in court really quite fast. She would do things to even hurt me, even if it hurt her own son. She's more interested in hurting me than she was even spending time with her son. She had a number of lawyers quit on her, and a bunch of her lawyers were even women. The government-appointed lawyer, after she left, came to me and said, "You know, your ex-wife hates you." And I said, "I know." And she said, "She has no interest in your son whatsoever. She's only interested in hurting you." Because she's had many opportunities, and every time she had custody, she would do something to just worsen her position. But then once I had full custody, she was more interested in just hurting me than she was in even trying to have a relationship with him. She didn't call him. She sent him, I think she sent him 1 or 2 letters in the following months after. And then for over 10 years, she never tried to contact him a single time. And we only got a letter in 2021 after we had to go to court again. She sent another letter. And that's it. 1 letter in 10 years? Well, in 2005, I got full custody of him. And the judge sent him overseas. We were based in Cyprus, but we were temporarily living in Turkey. So he was in school, in private school in Turkey. Then we returned to Cyprus. Then in 2006, I sent him back to visit her in the summer. At the end of the summer, she didn't want to return him. So the judge ordered her to put him on a plane and had to have police remove him from her. And then she filed a kidnapping report with the police, led the police to believe I came in the house and took him out of the house. Called the police, cleared that up, but the FBI at that point was already pushing it with the police. The FBI was pushing the police to try and file a kidnapping report, which is very unusual because normally it comes from the bottom up. They were trying to push it from the top down so they could pull it back up. And then she disconnected her phone number December 2006, so we had no way to reach her. And she refused to communicate by email. She demanded I send letters to her mother's house, which took weeks to come through from Europe. And by the time 2007 rolled around, the summer, we didn't have any way to be able to send him back to her because we didn't exactly know where she was and we had conflicting court orders by that time.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Расскажи мне немного о себе. Почему ты решил приехать в Россию? Мне дали политическое убежище, и, по-моему, я второй после Сноудена американец, который его получил. Посольства США в 4 странах преследовали меня. Это дикость. И у меня есть пара теорий. Большинство говорит, да это просто бюрократические ошибки. Но это невозможно. В 2002-м в наш дом на Кипре ворвались с обыском. У них огромное досье на мою жену. Они приходили ко мне в болгарскую тюрьму. Приезжало ФБР, они пытались заключить сделку. А когда я работал в Microsoft и отвечал за Ближний Восток и Африку, меня пытались завербовать сразу несколько разведывательных агентств. Когда же я отказал им, они решили сделать предложение, от которого нельзя отказаться. Такой у них в порядке вещей.
Можно ли это доказать? Нет, потому что они не оставляют визитку, что мы, дескать, из спецслужбы. Но очевидно, что меня пытались завербовать 3 раза.
So I went to Bulgaria and I was arrested by Interpol and I found out the FBI had a warrant for me as well as an Interpol red notice.
Почему тебя разыскивает ФБР? У себя на сайте они пишут, что я незаконно удерживал сына, но это ерунда. У меня была опека над ним, и он тогда уже жил в Европе. И ты можешь это доказать? Да, могу. А потом они сказали, что меня обвиняют в его физическом похищении. Но дело в том, что нас тогда уже не было в США.
А за 2 месяца до этого тот же судья, который все это затеял, велел полиции посадить моего сына в самолет, чтобы вернуть мне, потому что он гостил у матери в США, и она не хотела его отпускать. А судья послал полицию, чтобы они забрали его и посадили на самолет. А потом тот же самый судья обвинил меня в похищении. Сейчас дело закрыто, но федералы не хотят закрывать его у себя.
Well, theory one is that when people normally come across my case, they just think it's a bunch of mistakes. But as you go through the transcripts and all the correspondence over the years, you can clearly see that these were not mistakes. Even the things that they've lied about were not oopsies. They very clearly intentionally did what they did with intent. So theory one is not possible at all. Theory 2 is that the main FBI agent in this case, he used to have a much higher position in the Counterterrorism Task Force of Maryland. And then one day he got transferred to the branch office in Erie of the Pittsburgh office. This is a huge demotion. Now, why would he get such a huge demotion? I can only speculate that he did something wrong and they just wanted to push him into a corner office. And what happens to these agents sometimes is they want to rebuild their careers, so they try and catch somebody and make themselves look successful. And the FBI has a history of basically framing people to make themselves look successful. You can look at Richard Jewell. You can look at the Newburgh Four. You can look at the California couple right now or who they've framed. When they can't find somebody or they want to make a big deal, they just frame people. And there are dozens of cases where this has happened. So that's theory 2, is this FBI agent was trying to rebuild his career. But the problem with that theory is that the number of people who have been involved in my case is way beyond this single agent, and the actions they've done takes way beyond what a single agent can do at his level. So while that theory is possible, it's highly improbable. And not only that, but I had problems with the US government way before the FBI was involved, going back to 2001 and 2002, when I first moved to Russia.
А на правительство ты работал? Нет, нет. Как ты думаешь? Мне просто любопытно. Могло ли причиной всего этого стать что-то такое, над чем ты работал в одной из этих компаний?
Нет, я никогда не имел дела ни с чем секретным. Я разрабатывал программное обеспечение, которое использует правительство на космической станции. Но это коммуникационное ПО.
Когда я переехал в Россию в 2001-м, я женился и жил в семье с людьми, которые работали на военном авиационном заводе. И они там не полы мыли, скажем так. Но у них не было доступа к совершенно секретным военным технологиям. Они инженеры, все хранили в голове.
Это члены нашей семьи. Мы много лет жили в одном доме. У них был доступ к какой-то информации, и американцы узнали обо мне, и, похоже, у них была прям какая-то мечта, в которой я стал бы шантажировать свою семью, чтобы получить доступ к этим секретным данным.
So after I moved to Russia and I became engaged to my current wife, I was put on the Russian security watch list, which is normal because of who her parents were and the clearances they had. As I've told you, I have a friend who is in the US and he was married to a Russian national, and he had security clearance in the US, and she was put in the FBI watch list. All countries do this. And the Americans found out. That seems to be where all the problems started. And they seem to want to have tried to get me to blackmail my wife's parents or something, although it was never going to happen. They've never told me anything secret, and I would never even try. But they just wouldn't take no for an answer.
Этого никогда не случилось бы. Мы никогда ничего такого не обсуждали. Мне ничего не рассказывали, я никогда не спрашивал. Российские спецслужбы, я не могу это доказать, но, возможно, они знают о моем деле больше, чем я. Может, мне дали политическое убежище, потому что они знают больше о моем деле, чем я. И это такой жест благодарности. Эй, ты мог нас предать, но не стал. Я даже не знаю.
I was in and out for 3 months because they would put me in, they'd let me out, they'd put me back, they'd transfer me, and so it was in and out for 3 months.
And what was the reaction from the US?
They were the worst part of it. They were doing everything they could to keep me in prison. Every time I would petition to get out or be put on to stay with my friends, they would resist it. They would fight it. In fact, I was put in the worst detention center they had, and we requested they transfer me to the new one, and the American embassy resisted me being transferred to the new one. Because what they want to do is keep you in the worst prison possible, just like they did Sam Bankman-Fried. They want you to give up, so they'll put you in the worst possible prison you can. In fact, they issued the warrant in May 2009. In June, I traveled to France, and we stayed in France for almost 3 months. And I also went to the Netherlands and Belgium, and they could have arrested me in any of those countries. And they knew I was going because my conference schedule was public. But they knew I was going to Bulgaria in October, so they preferred to put me in the worst prison. So the US didn't arrest me or have them request to arrest me while I was in France or Belgium and Netherlands because they know I'd be in a nice prison. They preferred I be in a Bulgarian prison. And this is standard practice. I'm now in touch with several other fugitives and we all exchange stories, and you can see the standard playbook of how they operate. They try and put you in the worst prison possible to try and get you to give up rather than have to fight the extradition. Oh, it was extremely bad. It was not as bad as the Bahamian prison, but it was bad. There were 4 of us in a room designed for 2. Nobody spoke in English. There was not enough food to live. The prisoners had to have food brought in by their families. Fortunately, they shared with me. There were cockroaches everywhere. There was no heat. There was shower once a week, and we were locked in the room 23 and a half hours a day.
So, Chad, please tell us, how do you get out from prison?
Well, I fought the extradition, and I beat the extradition for a variety of reasons. And then the U.S. appealed, which is unusual. It's not unheard of. Sometimes they do appeal if the U.S. loses an extradition. But most times if the U.S. loses, they give up. In my case, they appealed it, and I had to go through it again, and I won again. And then when I got back to St. Kitts, they tried to extradite me again, and they were also denied there. So I've beaten 3 extradition requests at this point. Now, there's a variety of reasons. The FBI lies often to the press. They've done that many times. So the FBI says that my extradition was denied because Bulgaria doesn't consider it a crime. But they're playing on a technicality. What happened is they're saying that international parental kidnapping is not a crime in Bulgaria. That's true, but that doesn't mean it's not a crime. It just means it's a different charge. So the charge that they charged me with, when you look at the details, because the FBI was trying to classify it as a kidnapping. And kidnapping is a crime in Bulgaria. But when they looked at the details of the case, and see, during an extradition, they're not allowed to look at evidence. They're only allowed to look at details of the accusation. They clearly looked at the case and they said, this is custodial interference. Whether he's guilty or not, this is not kidnapping. He never physically, it's not even a parental kidnapping. He never physically took the child. At worst, it's custodial interference, which is not a criminal code in Bulgaria. So it does not justify under the treaty, because under the treaty it has to be criminal and punishable by, it's either 2 or 3 years or more. I don't remember what it is. So the FBI interpreted that as, well, international parental kidnapping is okay in Bulgaria, so that's why they did it. But no, that's not why they did it. It's because the details of the case did not match the accusations. And the details of the case were not extraditable under the treaty because it was custodial interference, even if I was guilty.
So after that, when you get out from prison, what was your destination?
Well, I wanted to go back to the Caribbean, but the problem is the U.S. continued to interfere. They bribed a police officer. Can I prove they bribed it? No, but if I tell you the story, you understand why we know they bribed him.
When and where, please?
In Bulgaria, because the Bulgarians had seized my passport. So the Americans revoked my American passport. The Bulgarians had seized my St. Kitts passport, and they had been told by the Americans it was fake. And they made up all kinds of excuses like, St. Kitts is not a country. So even after we proved that St. Kitts was a legitimate country, and not only did Bulgaria recognize them, then the police officer went on to say that my passport was fake. So they were trying to get me to be in Bulgaria legally, but I couldn't leave because they had taken my US passport, revoked it, and my St. Kitts passport was being held. And so they were trying to make sure I was illegally in the country. And Bulgaria had informed me that I would be arrested on day 91. So we went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and tried to get a permit. They wouldn't give it to me. So they were going to have me arrested for overstaying my visa, although I had no way to leave the country because this idiot police officer had my passport. And the way I finally got it back was somebody in the federal prosecutor's office put some dots, connected the dots, and they realized what was going on. And they said, we have no idea what this police officer has it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to initiate a transfer. And they said, I don't know who's interfering. We're going to wait for a holiday. And so Christmas and New Year's are coming. So I believe it was on Christmas Day. I'd have to double check my documents. She initiated a transfer while everybody was on vacation. It got transferred and she intercepted it during the transfer. And she said, we're going to give you a call in very short notice and you're going to have to drive to Sofia, which is like 3 hours, and go to an address I'll give you. And she sent us to a law university. And we went up on it was a skyscraper, went up like the 10th floor or something of a law university. And there was a back room where they were holding my passport during the transfer out of the police station. And we intercepted it and she gave it back to me. And she says, get out of the country as soon as you can. And so we booked tickets and I left almost immediately because they also had a passport block on me. And she said, I'll do the same thing. I'll remove the passport block during a holiday. Because during a holiday, we send all the senior people get off and all the junior people are the ones that are working. And you know, in Eastern Europe during New Year's, most government people that have to work are drunk. And so she says, we'll remove your name out of the passport system, but it can only stay out for 24 hours because it's the holiday. They're going to notice and stick it back in. You need to fly on this day. It was pretty good, but I had to transit 2 points. I had to transit France, but I didn't have to cross the border, so I got through France. And then I got to St. Martin, and I should have been able to transfer, but they were trying to catch me there too. They tried to make me go through immigration, and I refused. So we thought this might happen. So we had flown a friend of mine from St. Kitts to St. Martin to assist me. And he came over and assisted me and resolved the problem, and then I was able to fly back to St. Kitts. So I got back to St. Kitts New Year's Eve 2009, like a little before midnight. So technically I arrived back in St. Kitts in 2009, but just barely. And then I was stuck in St. Kitts until I got out last year.
Got you. look at this information that I got randomly. You can get the Saint Kitts passport once you invest an amount of, I don't know, $100,000. It's in nowadays it's 10 million rubles, Russian rubles. So if you invest this amount in the country, you will get the passport. So is that the way you had such a passport?
I'd prefer not to cover that if we don't have to.
Ты мог бы без страха вернуться в США?
Нет.
А здесь ты чувствуешь себя в безопасности.
Безусловно, здесь очень безопасно. Американцы все время меня спрашивают, если они приедут туристами, то будут ли в безопасности? Да, больше, чем дома.
In 2023, I finally got help from the government of Cuba and Russia, and I finally was able to get to Cuba, spend several weeks in the hospital there, and then fly on to Russia for further care.
So you have health problems?
Yes, they're being managed now. I still have some surgeries that need to be done, but when I first got to Cuba, I mean, I was literally dying. I was on the maximum dose of morphine. I was in a wheelchair and wearing diapers. So I was in bad shape. And even that was an improvement from where I was before, because Cuba sent doctors to my house in St. Kitts to help improve my conditions that I could even fly. And I needed an air ambulance, but none of the air ambulances flew to Cuba. No private charter would take me because I was a fugitive. So I had to get in such a condition and risk my life flying commercial. But even to do that, they had to improve my health condition a little bit. And it was extremely risky on my health. Cuba patched me up the best they could. They put me on another high dose of morphine, and I flew to Russia. When I got to Russia, they said, you know, when you land, call us and we'll send a car or an ambulance depending on how you are. So when we landed, I took the last morphine tablets, flushed the rest down the toilet on the plane because it's illegal in Russia, and came through customs and immigration, who had already been advised that I was coming. I'd already been cleared. And at that point, I was able to walk a bit. So I said, just send the car. They said, there's a car waiting up front with this plate number, get in it. And they took me to a hotel that was arranged for me. And there were surgeons and we were doctors, and I was on call with them immediately.
You never had, you thought about this, that you need to save your life so you can enter the US, even if they will detain you.
We made offers, in fact, and I can show you that you'll see the court documentation. We repeatedly tried to get before the courts. The courts kept denying us. And even in 2022, we offered again to the court. We said, if you will allow me to travel to get health care, I will turn myself in. Or if you will guarantee me health care and not delay the trial, I'll turn myself in. And they said no. And the US is not required to keep you alive. Under COVID, in fact, several prisoners sued, and the federal court said that the US prison system has no requirement or right to keep you alive in prison. And I was in very serious condition. I needed an air ambulance, and they refused to provide it to me. And in fact, in front of a judge, the lawyer for the FBI said that if I wanted to turn myself in, the only way it could happen is to turn myself into the US Embassy in St. Kitts. But there is no US Embassy in St. Kitts, and he knew that. He was just trying to shut the judge up and get out of court. So even the only option they gave me to turn myself in was not even possible, because the closest US Embassy is in Barbados, which is around 600 miles away and requires 2 flights, which I was not capable of doing. They did not want me to come back because they do not want me in front of a court. They delay, and tell you if you admit you're guilty, we'll let you out now. They will never allow me to go before a trial because they would have to admit what they did. But the FBI, because they had to fabricate and lie about things, they want to cover that up, because if this gets exposed, they're going to have to reopen every case that these 2 agents have touched. And it's going to cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. There have been other cases like this too. So they're trying to protect their careers and their financial liabilities.
Я часто говорю это людям. В США, куда бы я ни пошел, всегда носил с собой оружие. А тут меня спрашивают, что в России с правами на оружие? Да зачем оно мне? Здесь мне оружие просто не нужно. Для американцев это удивительно. Мой друг из Нью-Йорка, который живет здесь, говорит, что там его грабили 3 раза в год. С ума сойти можно. А тут я снимаю метро, и мне пишут, а где же все какашки, а где графичи, где наркоманы? Я тоже часто выкладываю видео про метро, и меня тоже всегда об этом спрашивают.
Yeah, I love it here. But remember, many people are under the impression that I just ran to Russia. I lived in Russia before all this. I first came to Russia in 2000. I moved to Russia in the year 2000, and I lived here for several years. So I had been trying to get back to Russia all these times. It wasn't just a matter of, oh, where can I hide? Let's go to Russia. I was trying to get back here.
Чаду, как и мне, задают много странных вопросов в ТикТоке. Недавно спросили, правда ли, что в России закончились помидоры. Американские СМИ часто пишут о России всякие глупости, и им верят. Так что мы решили съездить на рынок и увидеть все своими глазами. Спасибо. Ого, посмотрите на это место.
Он куда сейчас? Шпион? Нет.
Что он спросил? Он спросил, не шпион ли ты. Да.
Нет, я шпион, не шпион, я шпион. Я шпион.
Я приехал шпионить за тем, как вы выращиваете овощи.
Okay, so, ready? So yeah, people said I looked like Gru, so I did it for Halloween once, and the kids really loved it. And then when social media came along, I just kind of leaned into it, and everybody thought it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I have extra minions here, one in my bag, and then we have the minion friends up here, and I got some more little ones. I have a minion badge. I can put my ID card in. Banya hat. When you go to the banya. Let's go get the scarf. I'll show you the scarf over here. A lot of friends describe me as a Russian soul born in an American body. And I've just always felt at home in Russia, where I never really felt anywhere else. So when I was able to return, and not only did they save my life and help me out, give me a quality of life that is manageable. I still need some surgeries that are upcoming, but I've had all the most urgent ones. I'm no longer on death's doorstep. In addition to that, they've guaranteed me protection from Interpol by giving me asylum. And despite what some people say, this is not a common document for Americans. For Syrians, yeah. Ukrainians, yes. So I know that they have my back. Well, you know, when you're trying to promote your story, you need some kind of, I don't want to call it gimmick, but you need some sort of gimmick. That's how social media works. That's how you get media interested. And for a while, I didn't really have a name. It was just me or my nickname, Kudzu. And I needed something that really applied to my story and something people could kind of run with. So if they heard about me, they would have something to identify me that would tie to my situation a little bit. And since TikTok was my biggest platform and TikTok was really big, I just thought TikTok Fugitive. So one day I just randomly changed my name to that and everyone liked it and it took off after I did that. The way they do it's kind of hard. So yeah, I just share daily life about stuff about Russia because everybody thinks we ride polar bears and we live in the street and there's drug addicts and people are posting like we did just the one. They're locking up toothpaste in New York City and San Francisco, and here in Petorchka, you know, you can go to the ghetto. There is no ghetto of St. Petersburg. We could like Murino, and they still wouldn't lock up toothpaste, right? So I just do daily life things. People asked me one time what an ambulance looked like. I posted an ambulance and it got 600,000 views. I mean, it's just crazy. People have literally no idea what Russia's like. They think it's like the Soviet Union #1. And then with all this propaganda, they think we're all like dying here. We're standing in bread lines and stuff and just showing what the reality is. And I get called a propagandist sometimes just for showing prices in the grocery store like, you work for the Kremlin. I'm like, what? For showing cookies?
Все спрашивали, есть ли у них здесь помидоры. Говорили, что русские не могут достать помидоров. Давайте посмотрим. Скажи-ка, это, по-твоему, похоже на помидор? На помидоры, которые я хотел бы съесть. Помидоры, помидоры, помидоры. До самого конца.
Alex, and I'm not missing.